back to A Day on My Block. We're so happy that you came back to join us. We're back. And today I was really looking forward to kind of changing the pace a little bit. First, let me introduce my dynamic duo. I have Ty and Mark here with us. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm excited today because on the way over, you mentioned a couple of times about history and what a couple of the questions you had for Mark, and so I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, well, I always love a history lesson, especially when it comes from someone so educated. So I'm looking forward to that.
And what about Mark? Mark too. Mark.
Okay. Yes. You both are. I'm learning every day. So I think it's important, what we're doing with myBlock and trying to understand why crypto is part of it and a very big part of it, and why now? Why is this all coming to fruition? Why the launch? Why the big excitement right now? So, Mark, if you could indulge me and give us maybe a history lesson on the history of money and maybe take us back to what happened in New Hampshire in 1944 at the end of World War II. So,
Well, that's a good place to start, Mark. We all know money started in 1944, but anyway, bud, I don't want to get in your way. Please educate us. I know you're going to take that and run, but
he's going to be the class clown, so he might interrupt you. Keep going.
This is great. This is great dialogue. I am always and only a student, and I'm learning this as we go with everybody else.
Mhm.
The history of money is its own gorgeous topic, which goes back thousands of years.
Mhm.
And we talk about seashells and rye stones and gold. That's a different discussion from the discussion that we might have to set the context for what happened in Bretton Woods in New Hampshire in 1944. That discussion would be the history of modern global reserve currencies, fancy language. But let's put this in plain language and let's go back 500 years. So for the past 500 years, countries of the world have been taking turns at global dominance, one country at a time. And each country's run lasts about 80 years. This is Mark Twain. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So going back 500 years, we had Portugal. They had an 80-year run at dominance, and the world used their currency as a global reserve currency. Everyone around the world wanted to save in Portugal's currency because it was stable and strong. And they wanted to trade in that currency because how are you going to get someone to buy your stuff, or how how's get someone to pay you? You want the currency that is preferred. So Portugal was the first country. It had an 80-year run, then Spain, then the Netherlands, then France, then the United Kingdom, then the United States. And here we are. The question you're asking, why crypto, why now, is myBlock great moment in crypto? How can we contextualize that? Another way to ask that is a great reset underway. So back to Portugal and Spain and France, and during its reign, the dominant country's money is used as the global currency. And the baton pass from one country to the next, it's never smooth. There are resets, and these resets last typically 20 to 30 years. And they're marked by rampant instability, often war. And we are probably 5 or 10 years into a reset. I'll get to that. Let me give an example of a reset that happened when the baton pass went from the United Kingdom, from France to the United Kingdom. Now, that reset lasted from 1795 to 1815. We call that the Napoleonic Wars. Europe was at war with Napoleon. It was even here. It was the War of 1812. It was a global war.
Mhm.
Napoleon would become defeated at Waterloo in 1815, and the United Kingdom enjoyed primacy in the 1800s. The United Kingdom began its 80-year run. But my point there is, even though the British pound sterling would be the dominant currency for the next 80 years, it took a reset to get there. And that reset took 30 years. And that was unstable and that was war. Let me give one more example. The baton passed from the United Kingdom to the United States spanned from 1914 to 1945. So World War I to World War II. And the next chapter belonged to the United States and the US dollar. That brings us to Bretton Woods and 1944. Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The countries of the world met at Bretton Woods. World War II was starting to sunset. It was very clear that the Allies were going to win, and they wanted to establish a new world order and a new economic order. And the countries of the world got together in New Hampshire at a conference, and they architected a great reset. And the dollar would become the global reserve currency, and countries of the world would peg their currencies to the value of the dollar. And the dollar was going to be pegged to gold. That was 81 years ago. Like clockwork, a new reset is underway. Now, one footnote on the US and the dollar's 80-year run is, yes, it began with the dollar pegged to gold, but as we all know, in 1971, President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. The dollar nonetheless prevailed as the global reserve currency and the global trading currency. That's another conversation on how and why. But like Portugal and like Spain and like the Netherlands, like France, like the United Kingdom, the United States has had 80 years. So if you're looking at your watch, what should be happening if history is going to repeat or even rhyme is a new reset is underway. We're going to have 15 or 25 years of instability. It won't be clear who's in charge. It won't be clear what the dominant currency is. A lot of people are using their rear view mirror. And on the other side of the period of instability, the reset will be firmly established and there will be a new global economic structure and probably a new global world reserve currency and trading currency.
Mark, can I ask you a question on, I think it's important, at least for me to understand, and those listening, if let's use Spain as the example, and it sounds like Spain transitioned to the Netherlands, right? To the Dutch. And I would assume around that time, I could be wrong, but they provided the money for the Nina, the Pinta and the Santa Maria, right? And that's
Yes,
how,
sir.
people came over. At that time, when you talk about those, when Spain ran out and became the Netherlands, do you know, and it doesn't have to be that particular transition, but was there like a trigger? Was there an event? Something happened? Because we had a recent, it could be like an inflection point for us, could be COVID, right? Let's just say it could be COVID, and maybe that triggered or enhanced and accelerated, um, an exact 80-year marker, let's say, because the marker and COVID almost overlapped precisely, right? They missed by 3 years. Was there something
Yeah.
in those other ones that there's just a trigger that happens every time, or is it just purely simple? It's an 80-year deal, and that's like clockwork, right? I mean,
The,
I'm
the,
trying
the,
to put it together.
the science and the mechanics underneath the hood of the 80-year cycle is a power will be on the rise and there's an incumbent power that's on the decline. So after a reset, the rising power takes the baton from the declining power, and they follow, for you guys, they follow this 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 rise. Then they hit a top around 40 or 50 years, and then they slowly start to decline. It's not like they go 80 years and then there's a 79 years and there's a trigger at year
Right,
79 and they collapse.
right.
That's not what happens. What happens is they rise, and for the first 40 years, they're unchallenged. They're the new dog in town. Their currency is very strong. There's a huge demand for it, and there's not that much of a supply for it if the whole world wants it. Why does it start to decline? And then why at year 79 does it just collapse? And a new rising power inevitably is hungry and takes over. Well, let's answer question one. Why at the apex? Why doesn't it just keep going up or just go up in this plateau? Why does it have to go down? Debt.
Debt. Yeah. And when COVID came and we printed money like it was,
Yeah.
that was, I mean, come on.
So money printing is the next domino to fall after debt. So whether you're a household, well, a household can't print its own money, but when you go into debt, it's not that bad. You still pay bills and you still churn along as a household or as a country. So Spain would start to go into debt. Why? Because it has to pay for the armada. It has to pay for if you have a sprawling empire across an ocean, you would need to defend it with an army. Well, how are you going to pay for that? Especially as you get bigger and as challengers come from the outside to fight you, or as insurrections arise from the inside, either in your colonies or at home, you need to fight them. There's other bills to pay when you're a giant power. So you start to issue debt. Okay, well, if you take a loan, you can still pay your army. But then you got to pay back that loan. Mm-hmm. And that's Ty's point. You got to start printing some money. And if it's a hard money like gold, let's do the Romans, right? The Roman Empire went through the same cycle. It wasn't 80 years, but they had a rise, an apex, and a decline. And their currency was a silver coin called a denarius. And let's just pick the year 100 AD, 200 AD. One denarius was a piece of silver, and Rome was expanding. They went from a smaller, geography to a sprawling empire on both sides of the Mediterranean and deep into Asia and all the way up to France, etc. They have to pay that army. What they started to do was they took that piece of silver they used to pay the army or any other payments they have to make, and they started to put some copper in. So what started in 100 AD or 200 AD as a solid piece of silver, in around 300 AD or so, is half silver, half copper, and it's wrapped in a silver foil. By the end of the Roman Empire, 476 AD, the Visigoths and the Vandals they're riding through Rome and sacking it. Rome was paying its army with a piece of copper wrapped in silver. The fancy word for that is debasing. And Ty's word,
Right.
Ty, literally means you're debasing it.
Yeah.
And Ty used the term just now, money printing, which is debasement of printed money. So back to Spain, did something trigger Spain's fall and Spain's passing of the baton to the next power that would rise up, which would be the Dutch? Debt. They started to go into debt maybe year 40 or 50 in their 80-year run. To pay the bills, they start issuing debt. To pay the debt, they start printing money, whether it's
Right.
debasing a solid metal, right, like gold or silver, or it's printing, what we do today, the United States has printed money, which we'll get to in a minute. One more thing about Spain, this is kind of fun, and please edit this out if this sucks. But
because we are going to get to what you said about the reset, and we're going to do that in a second.
Yeah, we're gonna go right there. Sometimes my recordings with you and my calls to you are from New Orleans, in the French Quarter, and if you go to the parades around Mardi Gras, which is January and February, if you stand on the side of the road as the floats go by, they'll throw things at you. They'll throw little toys and little collectibles, and something that they throw inevitably from every float is something called a doubloon. It's a little piece of metal. It looks just like a coin. And they have a doubloon for this parade and that parade. And but it's always a doubloon. And you might ask, what is a doubloon? A doubloon is the name of the Spanish currency, a denomination
Yeah.
of their metal coin. Now, you might do some math and say, well, wait a minute. Spain possessed New Orleans and the Louisiana Territory from 1762 to 1803. And that was because France said, we're going to let Spain hold on to this territory. So it's always instructive to understand that we're always using a rear view mirror. If Spain's run was in the 1500s, why are they celebrating a Spanish currency in 1763 or even now? And it's like,
yeah, that was 400 or 500 years ago.
Yeah, but just staying because of sentimental reasons, people don't necessarily keep up with what's going on. Thomas Jefferson wrote this famous letter. He said, "The perfect currency is the Spanish currency," and Spain's currency had collapsed 100 years prior. It was the Dutch currency that you probably wanted to get a hold of, and if you're not moving fast enough, you want to get on the French currency. So that ball keeps bouncing. And humans, Hegel has a great quote that says, "We fail to learn from history, that we fail to learn from history." It's like, break the rear view mirrors, stop looking back, stop looking at the British pound sterling. It's gone, dead.
Yeah.
The dollar might have another 80-year run ahead of it, but if
That's
you're
what we're going
looking
to
at
talk about next in the next segment.
Yeah.
I know we have to take
Yeah.
a break, but let's get into that and stable coins and what you just said, the reset, because that's going to be the important topic, and to bring it back to myBlock, a destination for stable coins and all those things in the next segment. So let's do that.
Yeah, and this has been fascinating. Thank you. I'm learning with everybody else.
Blown away as usual, brother. Thank you. Friday night, right? Friday night, and we're doing the show, and you're Friday night in the French Quarter, so I know we are keeping you from going out. So let's take the break, and then we'll come back to the next segment so you can get out of here.
Let's look.